What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and today I want to talk about Black Widow. I recently rewatched this movie in anticipation for the Thunderbolts movie that will be coming out next year. I'm super excited for that, and 3 of the characters in this film were actually featured in the Thunderbolts film, so that's pretty cool. As always, quick spoiler warning for all of this movie. I will be spoiling the entire film, as well as a spoiler for the films that surround it chronologically, like Infinity War and Civil War. Those are the 2 big films. So yeah, those 3 films will be primarily spoiled, and then anything else on the MCU up to this point is fair game. But I won't spoil anything past this point. So Shang-Chi and onward, I will not spoil. So just so you're aware, that's kind of where the spoilers will be at. You have been warned. Okay, so jumping into this film, I am only okay with it. I don't like it very much. I don't hate it, but I also don't like it that much. I'm just okay with it, you know? And I have 3 big reasons for that pretty much sum up all of my thoughts towards this film. So let's just jump right into it. My first biggest problem with this film is that there's no Hawkeye. It definitely feels like he should have been in this. There were some fun scenes where he could have, like, his archery would have been very fun to have seen. And on top of that, you could have had some nice flashbacks and stuff. They reference him like half a dozen times in the film. And so without him being there, it just feels a little emptier. Plus, his relationship with Black Widow is one of the strongest in the entire MCU. So not having that in this film just really bothers me even more. Again, it's not the end of the world. I still like this film in spite of no Hawkeye. It is my 3rd biggest issue, not my biggest, but I definitely think the film would have benefited greatly by having him in it. And I get with the timing, it doesn't exactly work out. You know, notably, he is under house arrest at this time in the chronological story point of view, in the canonical story. But you're telling me 2 super spies couldn't figure out a way to get around the house arrest beeper? Like, come on, especially for like a few days when Black Widow needs his help. I don't know, it definitely feels like that should have happened, but it didn't, and that's okay. It's still, I think the film still works without him in it. It's not like it stops the film from being good, like the other 2 issues, in my opinion, but it does hurt the film, in my opinion, and so, that's my first big struggle. Moving on, I think the next biggest problem that this film has is the conflicting tones. All right, because while the MCU normally thrives on inserting a joke into a super serious moment, it did not benefit this movie at all. In fact, I think it actively hurt it because you had some really goofy moments, particularly surrounding Red Guardian, and then you had some really dark and serious moments and stuff. Notably, I remember watching this film and being like, okay, yeah, you know, kind of sad backstory, whatever, is classic. But then the title sequence gets played, and you low-key see just these images of these very sad, depressing documentary type images of essentially human trafficking. Like, it is horrible and terrifying and sad and whatnot. Then later on in the movie, you see Yelena like kill this woman brutally with a knife, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like, this is horrible. And then you see another woman who, like, against her own will, essentially has to kill herself. It's awful, terrible stuff. Like, those are just 3 scenes, and I think there might be a couple others, but either way, like, you have a lot of these scenes that are just like really dark and really serious. And then you have Goofy Red Guardian, and you're just like, wait, what? Like, what kind of a film am I watching? And stuff. And I don't think it needed to be that dark, and I don't necessarily think it needed to be that goofy. I think they should have stayed more towards the middle ground, but here we are. And I think that conflicting tone and that, you know, refusal to stay on any one focus or not really hurt the film. And I remember a lot of people complaining like they didn't connect with this movie because it was like a Jason Bourne movie that didn't want to be a Jason Bourne movie. And I really agree with that in a lot of ways, because they didn't let Black Widow be the bad person that she once was, and they didn't let the movie stay serious. So it was just it's interesting. And this is something that I think actively hurt the movie. So yeah, not the biggest fan of that. Wish the tone was a little bit more middle of the road, but here we are. And lastly, my biggest problem with this film is the villain, Taskmaster. And you might think, well, shouldn't the tone or whatnot be the greater focus? But no, my biggest focus has always been on characters. And on top of everything else, like, this is a superhero film. Superhero nerds want to see their characters done justice, want to see their characters done well. So when you don't do their characters well, it hurts your film overall. A lot of comic book fans do not like this film because Taskmaster is done so poorly. Ironically, however goofy Red Guardian is, he is a better Red Guardian than Taskmaster is Taskmaster, and it's just very, very frustrating. Now, one thing I want to be clear on, I do not have a problem with Taskmaster being female or anything like that. That's not where my issue lies. My issue with this Taskmaster is that it feels like a significant departure from the comic. And while that's okay in many instances, this is not one of them. A couple of things. Number one, Taskmaster usually is a little prideful of his gift. He's usually very prideful of his ability to mimic and copy any single person. And the fact that we had no swagger, no bravado, no challenge and whatnot in the Taskmaster's mannerisms and stuff just bothers me. The fact that he was a silent killer was just like, this is not working as well. It's clear that they were taking influences from the Winter Soldier, both, that movie as a whole, but also the character, the Winter Soldier. Like, that's what they wanted Taskmaster to essentially be. But like, whereas the Winter Soldier absolutely should be this silent menace and threat, the Taskmaster definitely should have a little bit more speaking, a little bit more bravado to him. And so that was very frustrating not to have that aspect of the character there and stuff. Another big problem I had with the Taskmaster in this film is usually the Taskmaster is a very menacing threat, not just because he can copy all these people's moves, but because he knows and memorizes your moves. He knows what you're going to do. And in the comics, they take this to a little bit of an extreme, in my opinion, where like no one can land a punch on him because he knows exactly what you're going to do and he's always going to counter it. Personally, I don't like that idea because I think even if you know what someone's going to do, it doesn't mean you can always counter it and stuff, but it still poses a very big challenge for the heroes in that, again, usually it's very hard for the characters to land a blow, to do something and stuff. But in this movie, they barely had any of that. To be fair, we didn't really have that much Taskmaster, and that's really unfortunate. I wish we had more of him, and I wish he was more of a threat, or she, as we now know. I wish she was more of a threat. I wish she was more of a presence on screen, but she really just did not have that much screen time. And the threat of her knowing all of your moves just was not expounded upon. Like, they should have made that a big deal. I wish that when Black Widow, talks with her sister Yelena, she's like, yeah, I fought this guy, he knew all of my moves. I wish she had a conversation about how do we fight someone like that who knows everything that we're going to do. And she's just like, oh yeah, he's been training the Black Widows for years now, and because he trains us from birth, or since capture, he knows all of our moves, he knows all of our techniques and stuff. And it's just like, oh yeah, that would be an awesome villain. That would have been a much better story. That would have made us comic book fans a lot happier, but they didn't emphasize any of those things, and it really bothered me. Yes, they had a bunch of fun little moves that Taskmaster did that mimicked Black Panther and Hawkeye and Black Widow notably, and all these other characters and stuff, or Captain America and stuff, but they didn't have him actually mimic your fighting styles and know every move you're going to make and stuff and be this threatening, menacing force. I think the bridge scene was really well done when he and Black Widow fought on the bridge, but other than that, they didn't have that much of him knowing all of your moves type thing, and it just it's really frustrating to me, and I wish Taskmaster was better. One thing I will say is that since the Taskmaster identity and persona is adopted through technology, they made a big deal that the technology mimics your moves, the technology records where you're going to do and all that stuff. There is absolutely a possibility where the technology could be given to someone else to fill those shoes and fill that role. And so there is the possibility that you could kind of change the character's mentality, do a soft retcon on the character to just make them better. and stuff. And yes, she was still originally this female, the Dreykov's daughter, that was tragically, exploded and stuff. But now the mantle is donned by someone else, and I think it would make sense for Dreykov's daughter, her wanting to get out of the armor so that she can leave that life behind. But at the same time, I've seen the cast of the Thunderbolts, and she's on the cast, so here we are. Happy for the actress. Glad she gets to have a chance to maybe have more speaking lines and maybe be more of a character, but here we are. So yeah, that's my biggest issue with this film, is I think if they nailed Taskmaster, a lot more people would have enjoyed this film a lot more. But they didn't nail him or her, as the case may be, and so it hurt the film. To finish up on a positive note, some things I did like. I love Black Widow's white suit. That was so cool and so epic looking and worked so well. I really liked Red Guardian, even though he was more goofy than I think he needed to be. I did enjoy his goofiness, and I enjoyed his characterization. That was fun. That was entertaining. And I also enjoyed where this movie took place, like the fact that it took place between Infinity War and Civil War, and the fact that Black Widow was a big part of bringing Captain America and Sam Wilson back together to form kind of the secret Avengers, if you will, who were going to be on the run from the government. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a really cute tie-in to Infinity War and to the larger story. And one final thing I forgot to mention was how much I enjoyed Yelena. She was the shining bright light of this movie. She brings this movie up, in my opinion. She's just so good. And one of the reasons behind that is because I think she's one of the best replacements for the original Avengers. Sam Wilson, Captain America, is pretty good, but I think Yelena does it better. And with Iron Man, they have like 3 people that they're trying to figure out who should replace Iron Man. And between Peter Parker, Riri Williams, Ironheart, or Rhodey, I don't think any one of them fits the bill perfectly. And it's just a real big struggle and stuff. But I love Yelena as the new Black Widow. She very much reminds me of Natasha Romanoff, and does a good job with that, but she's her own thing. She's her own character, and that is something that's truly amazing and truly impressive. On top of all that, her arc in this movie specifically is really good. Seeing her deal with the tragedy of like having committed countless murders and crimes under drugs and under the effect of this horrible, controlling agent is just terrible. But then furthermore than that, the fact that like she had this family unit when she was a kid, and she held on to those memories, even though she knew they were fake as a kid. She understood that rationally, but for her, that was the only home she ever knew. And so it was like her lifeline. And that came through so well in the movie and just made her character arc and her story so compelling and so endearing. And so I just really like Yelena as a character and really enjoy seeing her. Plus her little joke of this would be a bad way to die kind of a thing, and all of that was just hilarious. And so I really enjoyed that. So Yelena is fantastic. Definitely brought the movie up for me. And I'm so glad she's in this movie and that we get to see more of her. So overall, while Yelena's presence and her character definitely bring the movie up for me, it's still only an okay movie. It still has its issues of Taskmaster and no Hawkeye and the weird tone, but it has that bright spot of Yelena. And I also haven't mentioned it, I'm really glad that Scarlett Johansson got one more chance to play Black Widow and to have her own movie. So that was all fantastic. And I love seeing her again. Black Widow, always solid. If I didn't mention it before, her character's great. So the movie's good, not great. And that's kind of how I feel about it. Now, hopefully it provides a good foundation for future installments. Having seen Yelena and some other MCU projects, it was really fun to see her come back and stuff. And she's going to be in the upcoming Thunderbolts movie, as I said, no spoilers, but her and Red Guardian and Taskmaster will all be there. So hopefully this movie sets up a good foundation for that movie and future installments. But we'll see. I have no idea at this point. So overall, Black Widow, good, not great.